Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. This is really an important day in our community. But if we could all just rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah!
Well, first, I want to thank everyone for attending this morning. I know how busy your schedules are, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share some time with you and find out what exactly is happening in our home community. I think it's absolutely essential that we keep our ear to the ground and find out what's really happening in the community and not relying exclusively through newspapers or tweets or emails or anything else. It's to have a real conversation with friends around the table, and I'm so grateful you take this time with us. What I thought we might do, if you're willing this morning, is I kind of want to give you a Washington update, kind of from my perspective, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, etc., but devote most of the time to your questions and kind of reports of what's happening in your community. As you know, Florida is in an economic boom right now. It's exciting to watch, especially for us in North County, seeing the space industry just absolutely take off, no pun intended, and the positive ripple effects it has across our community. And it's happening not just here in Brevard County, but the other part of our congressional district is Indian River County, and that area also is booming. And it's a real testament to Florida's commitment to creating new jobs and opportunity, and I think also the commitment of our community to really push forward with educational choice, making sure we elevate our schools' competency, and giving parents that ultimate say of where their children actually go to school. And I think you've seen a real success there, and it's the reason why everybody wants to move to Florida, as all the smart people in this room have already done. As I travel the country in my new role, I say to people, someday you'll be here too. It's just a matter of time before you make your way to Florida, and it's, again, an exciting time ahead of that. So to kind of give you the big picture of what's going on, I'll first talk about it on the personal side. As you all know, the committee that I chose to serve on first is what's called financial services. Financial services is what oversees really our economy, meaning that that's the one that looks over the stock market, that looks over their bond markets, the emerging industry, as the blockchain or crypto. It also looks over the Federal Reserve Board. These are important components, as I believe, strongly in a capitalistic system. It's what's considered an A committee, meaning it's a unique committee for a freshman to be on, and I'm very fortunate that the chairman of the committee already made me what's called the whip of the committee, one of the leaders of the committee. It's my job to make sure we corral the votes on tough bills and get them passed. And even more importantly, of course, for our home committee, I serve on the Science Committee, and specifically, I'm the chairman of the Space Committee. It is an incredible honor, especially for a freshman, to not only serve in that committee, but to be the chair of the committee, as we are leading the fight to make sure, one, that the Artemis program is a success this spring. We're about a year away from launching those astronauts in. We anticipate no later than hopefully April of next year that Artemis 2 will head off, and we're that much closer to landing on the moon once again for the first time since 1972. The other good news to report about NASA within that realm is that, as you know, there's been some large reductions, but with NASA, with the good work of both U.S. senators and those of us in the Florida delegation, there were no major cuts at NASA. There were, I think, a total of 23. The vast majority of those were actually up in the Washington, D.C. area. The vast majority of those are what they call DEI jobs. But we made a concerted effort to make a real push and make sure that those jobs were not lost because of the importance of Artemis. We wanted to leave no excuses whatsoever for a challenge that might happen there, because as you know, it's a little bit behind schedule, let alone over budget. We want to make sure that Artemis is a success to build on what Blue Origin, let alone SpaceX, has already done. That said, the other issues that are going on. One of the biggest issues, I'm sure you all found out during the election that most people were concerned about, is actually the number one issue during the campaign was illegal immigration. It impacts, of course, Florida cities as those costs escalate, and some of the other, let's just say, law enforcement challenges that came with it. I've had extensive conversations with our good sheriff and see some of those challenges that happen not just here, but also in Indian River County. The good news to report is that the numbers of people coming through the border has been reduced by 97%. 97%. And I think there's two things that are important there. One is we want to, of course, make sure that we know exactly who's coming across the border so that we can have legal immigration. I'm sure every person at this table has a story about how their family came to America, unique in different ways. But most importantly, we want folks that come into this country legally. We want to know who they are, and we want folks who are going to add to this society, who want to participate, not take from the system. And I think you're going to see more of that legal immigration happen because, as you know, over the last 4 years, with approximately 10 million people coming in, a lot of those we don't know who they are, that's taking away the opportunity for folks who really want to come in here and contribute. And there are jobs that need to be filled that aren't being filled right now by Americans who may want to work in that profession or for other reasons. And so with that, I think you can see by finally breaking that illegal immigration system, we're able to open up legal immigration in a smart way because there are folks who want to come here and do the right thing, and I'm excited about that. I think the other thing that's been a real plus in the last start of the year is gas prices. I just filled up my tank yesterday. It was $2.81, and that's opposed to almost $4 approximately a year and a half ago. That is a real challenge for working families to see those dollars come down because most folks in our community rely on getting to work in their own car. And so when you reduce those costs, that means they can do more things with more of those dollars. It was a concerted effort where we believe that the more supply we have, the better we negotiate with countries around the world. And that means also we're not buying from communist dictatorships like Venezuela anymore, which is so important. The other good news is, in general, inflation is now down under 3%. As you know, over the last few years, it got as high as 9%. But those inflationary costs going down, again, it helps working families and Americans in general. And that is a concerted effort that we have been pushing because the biggest pressure point, I think, on that has been just the pretty aggressive spending that happened in the last 4 years. $4 trillion increase in overall spending. And as you know, we're running a big budget deficit right now, which the other thing I'll talk about, DOGE has really been looking at. What I love about Florida, we are truly the sunshine state, not just with legislation, but more importantly, one of the things I did 12 years ago as Senate President, we also put all of our spending in the sunshine. We do the same thing with our county, of course, here. City budgets do the same thing. It needs to be done in Washington, D.C. You deserve to know how your money is spent. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. That is just a common sense idea. Heck, it happens in most families. My wife looks at everything I spend on my credit card, too, and vice versa. It's just a common sense idea where let's put the money out there, especially when you're spending other people's money. And I think that is a change that's happening. I know that Elon Musk has gained some grief because of this. But look, I think computer systems in America are finally talking to each other, which it wasn't happening. It's one of the reasons why some of these unique spending patterns they took place. And again, let's put it all in the sunshine. If it's a good idea, I think it'll prosper and grow. Bad ideas will wither and die under that sunshine. And so real opportunity there. And just getting back to the space issue once again, I think it's been undersold in our community. I want to make sure everybody knows that SpaceX just invested in our community $1.8 billion. I mean, that is an astronomical sum that we've never seen before in the 35 years that I've lived in Brevard County. And the fact that we are seeing these investments, the fact that Starship is coming to Brevard County is going to make careers for so many people. At least 600 full-time jobs will come from that after they make the build. So those are amazing jobs. And so as you've seen Florida invest in what's called science, technology, engineering, and math STEM programs, our kids are going to be able to actually get those high-paying jobs that in the past they had to go other places to go and get and retire here. And so when you see companies take off, not just Blue and SpaceX and ULA and Lockheed and all the others, let alone L3 Harris and Northrop, I mean, it's exciting what's happening here in Brevard County. And it really is a testament to our dedication to making this a business-friendly state and our dedication to making sure that we are a well-educated state. So again, exciting news there. And finally, I'll just say that just yesterday I was at the VA in Orlando. As you know, we have a clinic here in Vieira, but a lot of our veterans go over to Orlando. Rob and I had the opportunity to go over there and to see firsthand this amazing facility. Between 8,000 and 10,000 veterans in our area go there a day. It's remarkable. And in going through that hospital, you would be proud that our veterans are getting that top quality service. There's been a lot of also comments being made, whether it be in the press or on social media, that you might even read on my own page, because I'm exhaustive as far as you probably have seen if you've gone to my Facebook page. I want to really describe what I'm doing every day, what I'm finding out, so you have a real information out there with all the different news outlets. I was getting just overwhelming number of emails and comments about how 84,000 people have been cut from the VA. And I said, well, that's a lot. Let's find out what's really going on. So first and foremost, for those who don't know, there's 470,000 people who work for the VA. Actually, more people working for the VA that are in the United States Army right now, just to give you a number, okay? So when I looked at it, 84,000, where are they getting this number? Well, they're getting it from what they thought the cuts would have to be to make certain budget numbers. I actually talked to the VA secretary. I actually talked to the chairman of the House committee, and the number that we have found out that originally would be about 2,400 people cut, and that had been actually revised down to almost zero at this point. Even those people who were in, quote, temporary jobs have been brought back on because we want to make sure the services are provided. And the only people who left were the ones, and you probably heard about this, were given buyout opportunities, meaning they had what they call the fork in the road, and they were given the opportunity to leave and go into maybe the private sector, retirement, whatever it might be, and they chose to do so. And so there's the actual number of people who are cut, quote, from the VA, when you talk about back and forth, is almost zero. If you want to put a high number on it, it could be as high as 500. But again, that's out of 470,000. And most importantly, the critical workers, those people, doctors, nurses, the ones who make sure the appointments are made, the follow-ups and so forth, not one was let go. Not one. Meaning the front face of the VA has not been let go. And I asked the folks who led the Orlando hospital there for the VA, they say the wait time is between 8 and 10 days for primary care and a little bit longer for mental health or specialties. That's lower than the average. But again, we can always do better. But it's pretty consistent with what you might ask for if you go into the private sector. But we take great pride in taking care of veterans. About 11 to 12% of our folks in our community are veterans, including Rob, Keith, there's Keith, is a veteran as well who works for us, and there's other veterans right here in the room. And this is important. And if you don't know, my son is actually a member of the United States Air Force. This is a very personal thing to me as well. So. One of the things I think is essential as we try to bring the country together is let's talk from fact, not fiction. And when challenging cuts are going to need to be made, and they are, because we have a budget deficit. I did it as Senate President 12 years ago. We had to make substantial cuts to very vital programs. We need to have a dialogue from common facts as opposed to what you hear sometimes, the different news sources. And so I make that promise to you. We are being overwhelming people with facts. As you know, we've already had one tele-town hall, which had 5,000 people on it. And we're going to have another one at the end of the month as well, taking questions from Republicans, Democrats, Independents. We don't care, whoever comes into the queue. One of the challenges we do have is that, as you may have seen on the national news, when we have if they try to have a town hall meeting, it's not a meeting. It's not something productive like we're going to try to do today. It becomes a screaming match. And last time I checked, that doesn't work. And we've been incredibly accessible, but we're not going to subject ourselves to demeaning the process and denying people the opportunity to ask questions. And so those folks who did have some challenges and wanted to ask me some tough questions, we've answered all those. We've literally held all types of tele-town, or we'll have held one tele-town hall, and one guy sent us 80 questions. We're still working on, I think we're on number 78. But the fact of the matter is we are responding to those questions. And we need to focus on getting the job done and not playing politics, because we do need all hands on deck, and I'm glad to see that people are taking such an interest with that. And the last update I'll give you is on Medicaid. Again, I think everyone understands in this table today Medicaid and how important it is. But also we need to, again, kind of flesh out the facts here. Medicaid is something that's a federal state program. And Florida did not expand, unlike 40 other states. But it's a program that is designed to help two groups of people primarily. One is pregnant women, and the other, of course, is the disabled, let alone, of course, those people who don't have the resources to be in a nursing home. Those are the groups that really are designed to help who get Medicaid. And what we're doing there is that we are going to do three things to bring down some of the costs. We're not going to take away services from the disabled. We're not going to take away services from women who are pregnant. We're not going to take away services for people who can't afford a nursing home. But what we are going to do are three things. One is we're going to make sure that if you're able to work, you go to work. This is what makes America a unique place. You should not be a ward of the state. Second is if you're an illegal alien, you're not going to get Medicaid. That's designed for American citizens who are down in their luck. It's not a hammock. It's a safety net to help people out who are in a bad situation. And we want to be a compassionate society, and we'll do that. And third, we're going to do tests, meaning we're going to make sure you're truly qualified for Medicaid, meaning we are making these changes to preserve the system for the people it was designed to help. That's a very important discussion. This is not about cutting Medicaid. It's about making sure the people who actually qualify for it get it. Because if you're not truly qualified, you're committing fraud. And it's taking away from folks who truly need this benefit in a difficult spot. And so I want to make sure everyone's very clear on that. I don't know what the final number will be, but we're going to make sure that those 3 tests are put in place. So if you're here illegally, you're not going to get the benefit. If you're a person who's gamed the system, meaning lied about how much money you're making to try to get free insurance, when a lot of people are paying $1,500, $2,000, if not more, a month for their own health care, that's not fair. And if you're able to work, you shouldn't be preying on the system when there are many jobs, as we know, right here in Brevard County where they can get into and maybe get into a health insurance program or get on different programs. So it's important to me that we right-size this and we preserve it for those who are truly in need. And so with that, I just want to start with, kind of working away around the room, starting with Ann. But this is just a dialogue. There'll be a running dialogue. I think everyone knows if you call our office or reach out to us by email or on social media, we try to do our best to get back to folks as quickly as possible. But these kind of dialogues are really helpful to me because, candidly, when I'm in Washington, some people just tell me what I want to hear. And that doesn't benefit me or you. And it's a tremendous honor to be your congressman, following in the big shoes of Bill Posey. And as I hit the ground running, I think these kind of dialogues will be helpful, whether it be Chandler or others who's reached out to me throughout the years, or Stuart and I were just talking a couple days ago. It's really helpful to me as I take that knowledge up to Washington, D.C., because I represent about 800,000 people. And I want to make sure we're visible, available, and I know our staff does a great job. And so, of course, on our staff, Pam is our local district director. And she's done a super job getting our office up to speed. Keith Van Buren on my left is, of course, worked with Congressman Posey in the past, a veteran who handles a lot of our veterans issues. Julia Bowers, there on my right, she does a great job of handling a myriad of issues. We've already returned over $1 million, I think of $1.3 million, and handled how many settled cases now, Julia?
It's over 400. I don't remember the exact number.
So over 400 cases we've settled in our first 3.5 months or so in office. Again, that is what we're designed to do. We're getting a lot of calls right now about politics. What we are focused on are serving folks. That's why we put together this tremendous staff with us. Karen Bryan, who's in the back there on my left, she is our newest member, and specifically, as you all know with the Chamber and work with our local governments, she will be in charge of the grants. So if you have grants that you're involved in, I think it's vital that a congressman like myself works with the administration, and specifically, I'm okay with doing what they call member projects. I think I have a much better feel for what's going on in Brevard and Indian River County and Orange County than some nameless bureaucrat we've never met in Washington, D.C. And it's my job to be aggressive and listen to the community, whether it be on the train station we might want to get, or beach renourishment, helping out different veterans groups, transportation needs, environmental needs. Karen's going to be your point person, and I want to make sure people are aware of that. And of course, everyone knows Rob Medina, our great mayor in Palm Bay. We got some friends here from Palm Bay. He's done a remarkable job as our mayor and really helps us out on those type of programs. And also listening in is Valentina. Valentina is also a holdover from Bill Posey's office. She is our legislative director, and so if there's different legislation you want to follow, she is our point person there. She does a remarkable job on a variety of things, and we couldn't be more pleased as to what's going on. And just to give you kind of an idea of one of the things maybe we take most pride in, you've heard a lot about this tariff issue. It's a big issue. Stuart and I were just talking about it on the phone a couple of days ago. Let me just be clear. We had one. I'll give you one example where again, it's important that we know what's going on. Piper Aircraft. It's not in Brevard County. It's in North Indian River County. They're the biggest private employer in Indian River County. Their CEO called me up hair on fire, rightfully so, saying this tariff could dramatically affect our business. We get our engines from Canada, and we're very worried about it. And it's the only place we can get these engines, no other place in the world you can get them. And if we tried to build them in the United States, it would take us years to get the approvals and around $20 million. Okay, is there anything you can do to help? So I called the president. We worked with the White House, we worked with the U.S. Trade Representative, we worked with all those folks. Sure enough, we got Piper and the administration together, and we saw that if by actually looking more closely at what the rules are with what's called MCA, we were able to get where they don't have to pay that tariff. And now they are tariff-free. In fact, they're actually benefited because their biggest competitor is actually in Europe, and it might be a good thing. So those thousands of jobs which were in jeopardy by, again, getting involved because I heard from the community, we're able to work with the administration and find that they qualified to be tariff-free. This is the kind of common sense thing we need to work with together, Republican, Democrat, Independent alike. Our door is open to serve you. That's why we're doing this job. And again, by highlighting that, because I didn't know about it, they were able to just engage the problem and solve it one way or the other. Because the biggest frustration is when nothing happens. It's nice when you have finality one way or the other, and that's what we're able to provide for Piper, and it's the same thing we're working to do around the clock to make sure that if there's a ruling that doesn't make sense, sometimes when you just highlight it, good things result. So with that, I don't want to talk too long. Why don't we start with Ann, work our way around the table and kind of give us your perspective on things. And I'll do my best to answer questions if you have them along the way. But thanks so much for being here, Ann.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And I liked that Pam called it the first. So we'll look forward to coming back and doing this again. So Natasha and I, board chair, and I know you know Natasha, split up our talking points, so I'll go first. And first up is workforce. We were lucky enough to go on the EDC's leaders trip a couple weeks ago, chamber leads, and one of the consistent things that we asked of the people we met with was from the industry leaders was, what are you concerned about? And one of the consistent things that was mentioned was workforce. So one of the things we just want to put top of the list, and we know this is a combination of local and state and federal, but is continued support for workforce, and to keep an eye on the initiatives from Florida Tech, from EFSC, from local school districts, so that from K through 12 and well beyond, that we are supported in creating that next workforce to support the industry and the growth that's on the Space Coast. The second thing I wanted to mention was you mentioned fact versus fiction. And that's definitely an issue for everybody we talk to, is who do we listen to and how do we know those facts that you mentioned? What you just said and what you're communicating regularly, there is an information flow coming out of your office, which is much appreciated. Unfortunately, not everybody gets to those messages, correct? So there's that uncertainty of the federal changes that are happening that are affecting at the local level. So when we're hearing as chambers, hearing from small businesses and mid-sized businesses and large businesses about the way the communication, not the tariffs themselves, but the communication on what is the plan, it's directly impacting local businesses. One mid-sized business owner, a member of our chamber, who you know and would be happy to talk to you directly, said to me, my world is crazy right now because of the tariffs. Pricing is all over the place. Manufacturers don't know what they're doing next, let alone my customers. It's a never-ending conversation of, I think your price is going up, but I'm not sure, and it's taking up way too much of my time to do the real business of what we're trying to do. The other sector that's being affected by the communication is around the immigration issue. That move towards legal immigration, I think, needs to be communicated more, because we're hearing from contractors and construction companies that they are having a real problem. And it's not just facts, it's fear. Nobody knows what's going to happen, and they're losing their workforce because of fear, not based on facts. So I think some just clear communication across the level would be doing that, because it's slowing growth and it's driving up costs across all sectors. My third talking point, before I turn it over to Natasha, is space. Congratulations on the chair. We're so excited when you were named to that as a freshman of the space subcommittee. It was amazing. And not only that, Janet Petro being named as interim. So all signs forward, looking up for the Space Coast. So I wanted to mention a couple things. We're proud to be celebrating not only 1972 on the moon landing, but 1950 with the 75th anniversary of launch. Melbourne Chamber is proud to be working with the Legacy of Launch campaign. There'll be a celebration on July 24 at Gateway at Kennedy Space Center to really look through not only the history of space, but also what are we doing moving forward. Another consistent theme we heard in DC was launch cadence. With that dramatic increase, we urge a review and modernization of safety regulations at the Cape so that the cadence and the competition can be maintained as we move forward in space. And then continued federal support for NASA. That was great to hear, that no cuts. And of course, I think you'll probably hear it from everybody in the room. We'd love to see NASA headquarters co-located here on the Space Coast. We will support that, and also Artemis, of course. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Ann. And I'll follow up with those questions at the end. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for the invite. And I'm going to touch on infrastructure and growth. We're experiencing expansive growth, as you mentioned, Congressman, at the beginning, which is going to put pressure on infrastructure. We're very grateful that Ellis Road widening was fully funded, as well as the NASA Causeway finished early. But to address, we're anticipating federal funding to be cut. It's impending. We don't know how much it will impact the state of Florida. And the FDOT relies about 24% on federal funding. And we want to make sure that the congestion relief is prioritized as decisions are made short, above all, long-term, as our state grows.
Yep.
Okay? So we ask for continued federal partnership to support transportation, broadband infrastructure, and attainable housing that keeps up with demand, especially the water treatment facility, which would allow for further expansion for space commerce and launches on the Cape. Now CRA is a big topic, and I know it's a state-level issue, state-level matter, but the Space Coast does rely heavily on the CRAs. It's essential on the Space Coast, especially with its downtowns. And let's focus on downtown Melbourne revitalization. Many of our big corporations, and we've had many panels throughout the years, many of big corporate partners, when they're seeking talent, recruiting talent, they really leverage the downtowns for community appeal and for enhancing competitiveness. Losing the ability to bond for future projects will probably slow momentum and will probably adversely affect those big companies being able to recruit effectively. A lot of them are recruiting, and a lot of their employees are living in Lake Nona in Orlando. So that's a big topic of conversation. And we just want your awareness and support to amplify the voices of your local leaders as well as state leaders. And lastly, and this is very dear to my heart, as I'm a Brevard Zoo Board Emeritus member. I served on the board for 6 years, and I've been 2 years emeritus. But we just went in, and it's probably on your desk, maybe with Karen, for $3.5 million for the Bowen Aquarium, the Conservation Center funding. And it's to be applied to the Manatee Conservation Center, for which we've already raised $10 million in private donations. Okay? The aquarium will serve as a regional hub for conservation, which is expected to engage over 500,000 visitors annually, support over 1,200 jobs, and generate $128 million in annual economic impact, with over $10 million in private donations secured. Federal funds will accelerate completion and offset cost increases tied to supply chain disruptions, which are expected. So it's probably sitting on your desk. It'll be great if you could take a look at it.
Let me take a look at it. Sure.
And that's it. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us today. So I just want to piggyback off what Ann said regarding education, not to duplicate the wheel, but I think a lot of the miscommunication or lack of communication we're seeing is these space entities that are coming and putting their roots here, not knowing all of the opportunity with workforce development that we have through our CTE and our Space Florida programs in our schools. Our schools can't connect with these space companies because they're on the other side of the gate. We have limited resources to them from a marketing and a PR side of things, but how do we encourage those space entities to stop scouring the country for their talent and see that we have them in our backyard being groomed from Brevard Public Schools? So any advocacy from your side that we have those programs, I think would be greatly appreciated. From the North Brevard side of things, our trails. So Titusville is the converging point for the 3 major pedestrian trails. We were one of the first designated trail towns in the state. For 8 years now, we've gone back and forth with federal permitting processes to get the connector piece from Titusville to Playland Beach finished. FDOT pulled out 2 years ago because they've added another layer of permitting. We've advocated for streamlined permitting processes.
Who added the layer permitting?
The refuge federal permitting
Federal
side.
side.
Yep,
Is
the
that
federal side.
Is that the Corps of Engineers?
Can't say for sure. I have a letter I can leave with you.
Yeah, please do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now we're back on.
Okay.
FDOT has said, hey, we'll come back to the table and do this next level, but now we're negotiating maintenance plans between U.S. Fish and Wildlife, NASA, FDOT, and federal. So all I see is this long line of kicking the can down the road instead of getting everybody in a room together to finish this trail.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That is great news something we can tackle. Good.
Yeah. We see in Titusville on average 2,700 cyclists a year that come to our welcome center that want to ride this coast-to-coast trail, and they get to Parish Park and they hit a dead end, and then it's shared roadway with NASA traffic every morning, where we just encourage riders to stay off the road between 6 and 8, and again between 4 and 6 in the evening for NASA traffic.
Okay.
So I'll leave this letter with you. We've been
Yeah, please do.
communicating regularly with Senator Wright. Our mayor, I think, has written you a letter directly regarding the trails and the connectivity. So federal permitting reform at some point in time should probably be looked at for
Couldn't
streamlining
agree more.
purposes.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Absolutely. That's all I brought today.
Well, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my
Thanks,
big
yeah.
push.
Yeah. And just quickly on this, and I know Ann asked the same question. I've been contacted by different companies who want to make use of the workforce issues. And what I usually do is point them in the right direction. And there's one company, they work with Eastern Florida. It all depends on the fit. And so that'll be one of the communication points I'll make, maybe in our next subcommittee meeting on space, where recognizing that we have this remarkable workforce, you don't have to do all these hoops and so forth to get through and go to other parts of the country. It's right here, or they're well-educated and a short course would allow them to become a technician, whether it be on space or other issues. So great, that's a great point, and it's something that I know the resources are here, and sometimes just by educating folks like you've asked, it will be solved. So glad you brought it up.
Absolutely. So a prime example of that would be I recently met with Blue Origin, and they're looking for welders with a certain acronym at the end of it. But we just had 72 welding graduates at Astronaut High School that are ready to go into the workforce.
Exactly, yeah.
So is it a short program? Is it a staffing it? How can we get these kids the acronym? Astronaut also just graduated 26 aerospace engineers out of their program in partnership with the FSC.
Yep.
And are looking for work. So
I love it, yeah, and
Yep.
that's just a connection point to your point.
absolutely.
Great. Thank you very
for your
much.
time.
To piggyback on that and some more, I think part of it is these large companies are coming in and they're in the community, but not part of it. They have these glass walls around them, more like brick walls, really. And so you'd think SpaceX or Blue Origin would be, even a lot of the larger ones, Northrop Grumman, who have been here for a while, and Boeing and Lockheed. With the Space Coast Symposium, I've reached out to all of them. And so the challenge is that they're a huge part of our community, but not necessarily supporting the community. And with the billion-dollar contracts they have, with how many employees are here in our county, I really believe that they need to have a bigger footprint. You've got L3 Harris, who has their name on the King Center, hall. But other than that, you don't really see a lot of any of these corporations participating. They should be participating in the schools. They should be participating in all the universities. They should be part of the art culture. I mean, all of this is what makes a community. It's not just plunking a building here in our county and saying, we're here, and then not doing anything about it. So it's just very difficult,
Okay.
just so you know.
Sure.
The other thing is, specifically Palm Bay, because obviously that's my focus. St. John's Heritage Parkway, the connection from Malabar Road down to the exit on I-95 has no money and no future in sight. We've talked about it. It's becoming a problem because Palm Bay has 150,000 residents, and there is one way out of the south end now. If you get on the highway, great, but if you are in the southwest, It is a concern for not just the people that live there, EMTs getting in there, the fire, the police. We have one of the longest times, lead times in getting to calls because the infrastructure down there is an issue. And I know that, sure, we need to look at the state as well, but this is a really big ask because it's long. There's a lot of land issues involved in where exactly it's going. I'm sure the mayor can tell you more about the designs. I've seen plans for years. And sadly, when they built the first leg of it, they only made a 2-lane road.
Yeah.
When they opened it, it was too small. So, you know, then now we're faced with the rising costs of twinning that. Babcock Street from Malabar Road down to that new interchange is a single lane. And if you have 100,000 residents, at least in that area, trying to come up of one lane, it's a nightmare. I mean, it really is. And the lead times of trying to get in and out of Palm Bay is really, really sad. So that Babcock Street is, like I said, a problem from Malabar Road to St. John's Heritage Parkway at exit 166. We also have Brightline. So I was speaking with Mayor Blake, and I know he's already working with you, but they are looking to have the matching funds to help the Brightline station in Cocoa. I think we would take it anywhere in Brevard. We just would like a station, but I know that the mayor is actively working on getting that in Cocoa, so that would be amazing. I know they were trying to get the matching funds. And a couple of things, like over in Orlando, they have like our SCAT system, because we're 72 miles long, it really is a nightmare. I mean, it's 100 degrees out, the humidity sucks. Most of the stops don't have any benches, they don't have any cover. You know, there's the app now that you can follow where the bus is coming, but Orlando has almost like an Uber, where, you know, it's almost on call, where you can come. I got bleep times off, is that?
Just finish that thought, finish the thought, yeah.
So it's where it actually is almost like I said, an Uber, where we'll come to people's homes to pick them up and take them, because having a huge bus drive around with not tons of riders on it seems very, very inefficient, especially with all the technology we have nowadays. They've got autonomous driving vehicles like Beep that's over in certain areas. Lake Nona has some. I just think that we need to look at other things, and I know the TPO is looking at things like that, but I think if it comes from a higher level, that also helps. And one final thing, so with immigration, it was probably about, I don't know, I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, CareerSource had an economist come in and talk about the workforce. And he said, the United States are not having enough children to maintain the population. There is not enough of a workforce for the jobs that are out there. And we have to have a look at what that means. And so he said having an immigration process that does bring in the workforce that we need is really important. And he was talking back then about 3 million people needed for these jobs. And I'm sure it's so much higher now because we're just not procreating fast enough to get people in the workforce. And the jobs that are out there, if you look at the Florida gap map from the Florida Chamber of Commerce, the number of jobs that are available versus the number of people looking for work, there's fewer people
Okay,
looking
I'll
for
address
work.
that before. Thank you.
So that helps. So the Florida gap map is a really good one to look at.
Okay, thanks, Nancy.
Hello,
Hi.
Cherie Rigby, and I'm the board chair for the Palm Bay Chamber. And to finish out our talking points, we would like promotion for the NASA headquarters to be relocated in Brevard County and provide funding to update infrastructure to assist the rapid growth in the space industry at the Kennedy Space Center and port expansion. And provide funding for expanding the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant at Merritt Island, Sykes Creek, and fund a future facility at Port St. John. The Merritt Island plant will be at capacity, estimated by 2030. I also want to talk about infrastructure in Palm Bay. I'm a 20-year resident of the city, and I would love to see more proactive development. I don't know if it needs to be studies. Obviously, the funding needs to be there to be able to expand the roads, but sometimes when driving around, it's, she said nightmare. It's a little like, did I move to South Florida? Like, what happened? And then on another note for the workforce, I'm a parent of two Melbourne High students, and we got them into, I live in Palm Bay, we got them into Mel High in CTE programs. And I think that the programs can be there, but if the teachers aren't available or properly trained or wanting to teach the CTE classes, both of my kids' CTE programs were canceled. After the first year for my daughter and after the second year for my son. So they were no longer available. They were still able to go there as out of area, but just as a parent, I think the CTE programs are fantastic, but my personal experience is that we don't necessarily have the teaching workforce to be able to maintain what is a great idea.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you.
Stuart. Thank you for inviting us all here today, number one. That's really a great opportunity for us to sit around and talk to you personally about some of the issues we have. My issues, I guess, is kind of small compared to what everybody else's is. One of the things I was thinking about, I was sitting here talking about what's going on, is all these immigrants that came in, I think I probably have 2 or 3 of them working for me in the dish room. If they have jobs, is it possible that they can stay? Maybe somehow, I don't know. I suppose there's a lot of them that's came in on these planes, and I think that's where mine came from, on planes, because they're from Haiti. But they're in the dish room, and they do a great job. I'd hate to lose them, but I have a feeling that I might end up looking for dishwashers again soon. So that's, and then another thing that would be good is training. Those schools that teach people a specific job, like a mechanic or a chef or a nurse, those training schools, I think those would be a good thing to have, rather than sending people to college that really don't need a college degree to become a chef. But to become a chef now, it costs you $40,000 to go to culinary school with a college, where you could probably teach somebody how to be a chef in a relatively small period of time, just by on-the-job training, and maybe some sort of credit for that from the employer's perspective, as they get a credit for teaching somebody how to do a job.
Yep.
But more hands-on training.
Got it. Thank you, Stuart.
And that's exactly what I want to talk about. I'm going to talk a little bit about my story, because that has to do with the point I would like to make. I came here to the United States when I was 18 years old. I was those kinds of Hispanics that come to the United States and they don't want to speak English. I didn't want to speak English at all, because I thought I don't need to speak English to make it in the United States. And I did. I became an 18-wheeler, and I was doing very well in Miami, where everybody speaks Spanish. So I didn't have to speak English there to make it. I had my apartment, my 2 cars. I was doing very well. But after 4 years driving trucks, I decided to join the United States Army as a paratrooper of the 82nd Airborne Division. Before basic training, the Army sent me to English school in Lackland Air Force Base. When I was in Lackland Air Force, it's the Defensive Language Institute. When I was in Lackland Air Force Base, one of the teachers told me that I could write. And I say, but how come I can write if I don't know how to speak English? You know how to put things together. And since she told me that, I got addicted to learning English. When I got out of the Army, I had already an associate degree from Campbell University in North Carolina. Then I came here to Florida Tech to study communication. I graduated magna cum laude, and then I started writing for Florida Today in the business section. 6 years before, I didn't speak any English at all. 6 years later, I was writing for a major publication. When I was in Florida Today, I started my bilingual newspaper, Al Día Today, 20 years ago. Then I started joining the boards of directors. My first board of directors was Honor America, with the great leaders of Brevard County, George Galeco, Frank Kaiser, George Majid, big leaders. Then I joined the board of Lead Brevard with Bino Campanini, Kendall Moore, the big leaders here. And then I joined the Melbourne Chamber of Commerce, and I created a multicultural networking committee. Then I met Stuart Borton. He invited me to be part of the board of directors of the Palm Bay Chamber, and I created the multicultural networking group that I still going on in the chamber. Then Congressman Bill Posey came to me, and he gave me the mission to create the Viva Brevard Festival with Mayor Medina. After Viva Brevard, I started the Brevard Hispanic Center, an organization that helps individuals and families in areas of education, health, family issues, and immigration. Then I started my PhD, got my master's degree in Florida Tech. I started my PhD in UCF in Tech and Technology. And I started the Brevard Hispanic Chamber of Commerce with the help of Congressman Bill Posey. And it took me 2 years to get it approved. The congressman expedited the process. And hopefully I'm graduating in May with my PhD. And I would like to get one of those NASA jobs. It's in tech and technology with emphasis in digital media, and I think I'm perfectly qualified. But let's talk about the Chamber of Commerce. We have an issue of people coming from South with language barriers. Business owners, American citizens, but even if they speak English, it's difficult for them to integrate into our business community. The problem in Brevard County is that you need to speak English. It's not like in Miami. Here, the majority of the population speak only English. So I'm helping those business owners to integrate into the community through education-assisted technology. I believe that I don't believe in giving the fish. I believe in teaching how to fish. And that's exactly what we've been doing for a long time here in Brevard County, and that's what the Brevard Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is doing, integrating people with language barriers into the community. Many times they speak English. They speak English, however, they don't know how to do business in English, and that's what we do. The Chamber of Commerce is, in less than a year, we had more than 90 members, so we're doing very well, and I would like to look for possibilities for a grant because I had to pay rent, I have to pay an executive director, I have to, I don't have the resources, we only live out of membership. So if I get one of those good jobs in NASA, I'm gonna need an executive director because this is a huge need in the community. People coming from the South, we need to integrating. I believe in integration, not in isolation. So thank you so much.
Great to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jordan.
Thank you, Congressman, for hosting this, and thank you to your staff as well, and thank you to the mayor of the greatest city on the face of the earth, my mayor, Rob Medina. I just want to touch on real quickly, and I yield to our president and CEO. One of the main issues that the business constituency that we represent is really the lack of access to capital, right? And it is ultimately predicated on not having really a length of credit history, or perceived risk, or just the lack of understanding of resources that are available to them. I think all of us at the table are very appreciative of what DOGE is doing, and so I would ultimately say that I would like to see some of those dollars that are being found to be allocated to the SBA to create more opportunities for small businesses and startups. And with that, that's it. I think Nancy touched on Brightline, so hopefully I'll have a job for another 2 years or so. So thank you there. And you touched on inflation in the beginning, so those are my talking points. Appreciate you.
Great to see you, man.
Thank you for having us here, and thank you for the work that you're doing with the Department of Veteran Affairs. I am a United States Army combat veteran, serving our country honorably for 14 years. My husband is also an Army combat veteran. He's retired, 25 years, United States First Sergeant. And then my son, or our son, he is now assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg. And so I am super proud of, our military background. We kind of heard some of everything. I do have a few things that I wanted to touch on. The same thing that Jordan just said was the access to capital. And so one of the things that I did want to share was from the Space Coast Black Chamber's perspective, because we do advocate for Black-owned businesses. I mean, we advocate for all businesses, but specifically those businesses. And so, for instance, when the PPP funding came out, Black-owned businesses received less than 10% of that funding. When we talk about federal contracts, in the last 4 years under the Biden-Harris administration, only 1.6% of federal contracts was received by African Americans or Black-owned businesses, and so that is something that needs to be addressed before it's pushed into this new administration and says this administration's fault when it's not. We talk about NASA coming, and we do support NASA coming. We would love for NASA to come, and actually we work with Congressman Posey's office. We submitted a letter back in, I believe that was, 2023. It did make it to the former NASA administrator, Bill Nelson, and then it kind of just fell in limbo. So we are going to be resending it this week, probably today, PM, to you. Okay. But we would like to have some sort of partnership where we do a special unveiling of the 18 African-American astronauts who have, contributed to our space industry and our space history. We think that that is something that is important, that will also bring an economic impact to our community where folks can come and stay in our hotels, shop at our local businesses, and so forth. But once again, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and as a veteran, thank you for what you're doing at our VA, because I am one of those thousands of veterans who is assigned to the Lake Baldwin VA.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, and for those who served, thank you. This is very helpful, again, hearing firsthand and understand. Let me just walk you through kind of big picture so I can answer these questions as we go forward. I think one of the things I want to make sure everyone understands is the key, and of course, as you know, I served in the legislature and led the Senate eventually. The key to these components, whether it be transportation or otherwise, is making sure that everyone has skin in the game, as I put it. That the local government, the state government, and the feds all get together and work this together, because this way everyone understands that you can't just rely on just the state or just the feds or the locals, because we are in it together, and we want buy-in, literally. And so whether it be what we're doing in Palm Bay, which when I was leader of the Senate, we actually got the funds for that finally, which had been lagging forever, and we got it started. And it still needs to be done, because the reason I did it, because when I campaigned there the first time back in 2000, it was, especially the southwest portion, as you're mentioning, is a very challenging area. And I think that we need to figure out how we work those through. I was just meeting with our county commissioners this morning before our meeting today, and how do we make this work? Because, as you know, with the different limitations on how you spend those dollars, how do you widen that road from going 2 to 4 lanes, et cetera? I'm sure that the mayor would have some opinions there as well. But the way that I operate and the way that I've done it in the past, just to be consistent, is when we were able to get some of these chunks of dollars when the shuttle program was ending, we made sure we made investments in these different companies, and they came here because of that. We work with the EDC, but more importantly, we really aggressively went out there. At the time, it was Frank DeBello, if you remember him, and I literally got on the phone with Rick Scott and called these companies and said, come to Trump-Brevard, this is the place to be. We have the workforce, and we've seen this economic turnaround like never before. I've got to admit, I've exceeded my highest expectations because we went to work and didn't worry about who got the credit. So with that in mind, that is something that our office will do. We are going to do member projects or whatever they might call them, because, but it's only when, as I told specifically to each county commissioner who came to see me, different mayors, you all need to add to this. Sometimes it's in-kind services. It could be engineering service, but everyone needs to step up and do that, because we're all competing for dollars. And we're going to have the same kind of discussion in the recent future and talking about the lagoon funding, and that's going to be another issue. So all of us in this together I think will be more successful. So that's my general rule. You'll see that's why Karen's been brought on board. We're going to work on these grants, but we need everybody to go all hands on deck. It can't just be, hey, let's give it to Washington, because that's the reason why we have some budget issues. But if we all come in and work this, we can all afford to make some of these changes that you all brought up. I'll just kind of walk through all your issues, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. First, on the NASA headquarters. Obviously, we want that here. That's a no-brainer. But let me also explain what the process will be so everyone understands. first step, and this is where everyone is in lockstep, at least what I've talked to, is like everyone agrees we should get the NASA headquarters out of Washington, D.C. That's step one. And as you can imagine, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, and even Ohio recently is saying, no, bring the headquarters here. Well, I like our chances there, but it's going to be an all-in battle. It's not going to be an easy thing. My premise would be to give it to the President of the United States, let him make that decision based on needs. My argument, of course, is nationally, I think most people see Florida is where the rockets literally take off, where Artemis is going to take off. Starship will be soon as well. That is just logical where, yes, you have, of course, the engines and different things done in other parts of the country, but this is where it all kind of comes together. And so that's going to be my argument. I hope it's a successful one, but that's something I'm fighting for. Obviously, it's something that I've thought about a lot, but I also recognize that clearly other states are going to make this fight as well. And Texas is a large delegation, but it's something where both U.S. senators are on board, and we're going to continue to work that. Yes.
So the only question, and it may not be a question, would be a comment, but is there any thought or consideration, knowing that Texas is such a large player in this and we don't have any enterprise funds left at a state level for some pressure onto our state representatives to bring back some of those incentive money and not want to sell ourselves on sunshine and beaches?
No, I think we are going to sell, and the good news is that the governor's office has been very hands-on. I've talked to the Council 100, which is our major businesses across the state. Just had a conference call with them last week. They've asked me to lead the charge, as you can imagine. So we are working closely with those groups. I believe that even though, as you know, that the fund in Texas is much larger than Florida's, but at the same token, the governor, who's been, I think, actually incredible governor over the last now almost 7 years, he has said whatever it takes. And so I don't think we'll be, quote, outbid. I think this is, because, you know, Texas and Florida delegations are both very strong. They're a little larger state than ours. But the votes aren't there for one side or the other. You're not going to pass a bill, in my opinion, on this, let alone, as you know, the Senate needs 60 votes to pass anything, not just a majority. So my guess is that it's going to go to the president, and we're going to do our best to influence that, and the cards fall as they may. The great news is, as we already talked about, is that the Blue Origins and the SpaceX are already here. They're not going to move to other places. They already decided to leave Texas. Starship hasn't come to our area and make that $1.8 billion investment. As far as wastewater treatment plant, it's my understanding also that we've made some progress there. I'll let we're working with everybody involved. There's some different ideas about how we do that. Again, I don't want to take any of the steam from our county commissioners and others who have been working on this, but I think that we have a solution there. I think it will happen. I think that the best thing that can happen to make sure it comes to fruition is let's make sure that Artemis works next spring. If Artemis doesn't work, a lot of dynamics change. I've been told over and over that Artemis 2 looks very promising. Janet Petro, of course, ran KSC as temporary head of NASA before Mr. Isaacman is confirmed. He, of course, went through his hearings a couple weeks ago. I think he'll be confirmed, but I think that we can work that through. But the best thing that NASA can do for itself is to find success in this operation, which is years behind schedule and over budget. But I feel confident that will happen. As far as the Bright Line issue is concerned, it's something that we're all passionate about. I have been working very closely with COCO. I think they've actually moved into my office in Washington. I mean, every time I turn around, the mayor is there making his pitch. And I fully support that. I've actually talked to the Secretary of Transportation, Mr. Duffy, personally and on the phone multiple times. I've said that we are fully supportive of that. That will be in the next budget year. As you know, we're going through what's called budget reconciliation right now, but that will be the push we make. And again, this is a classic example where the locals have stepped up. It gives us a heck of a lot of credibility. And the contrast here is also our friend. In California, if you don't know this, they took the money back in the day when I was Senate President 12 or 13 years ago. They're still not operational. And here we are with an amazing track from Miami to Orlando. If you haven't ridden on, I would greatly invite you to do so. It's a pleasant, smart way to get into the traffic situation in South Florida. We don't want to be like that here. But that is something we're in full support of. Getting into the SCAT and some of these educational issues you all have talked about. This is, again, an example where I want to make sure there's absolute buy-in from the school board. I want to make sure there's absolute buy-in, and then, of course, moving on up the line. I do not believe in this idea that that all the decisions need to be made in Washington. In fact, I'd like to see some of these decisions head back to the state. We want to support the local decisions as opposed to top-down solutions. And so, as you talk about what Stuart did correctly in training, I happen to be a college professor, so I'm a unique animal, but our kids don't have to go to college. They can go into different programs. Everyone has their own path, and the college route is not the only route. And as we're seeing with the new millionaires, as people are saying, are these folks who worked on AC and different programs that can get into this workforce, and the entry-level jobs that Stuart are talking about are common sense. And so what we want to do is we don't want to have redundant systems. I think you brought it up, Ann, about these workforce programs, and they talked about it in Titusville as well, is what we don't want to see is almost competing workforce programs. We want to say where people could, if they're interested in one motive, they're going, and it's clear from the big businesses you brought up, Nancy, making sure that they participate, and that's one of the jobs I want to get more involved in. And they recognize that this workforce is here, or a few I wouldn't say a few classes, but a class over a few months can really give them those extra nameplates so they can qualify for these jobs, which are not just jobs, they'll be a career. And as you know, welding and other things are not just for the Space Center, but in so many different services. As far as, we already talked about the Palm Bay Loop, again, this is where we need everybody to step up. I'm sure you can have a side conversation with our mayor here about that, but it's something that the state really needs to step up on. And I know personally the state got involved because I'm the one who got the funding back in the day. We need to continue that effort, and I'm sure that the mayor will be working on it. And if I can assist to get additional dollars, of course we'll be there for that. But we need to make sure that the city, county, state, and then, of course, those of us at the federal level will get involved. And I love this idea about some type of job fair and training fair. It's something that maybe we can even incorporate with Karen, a grant fair. You know, we need to make sure that communication lines are open with L3 Harris and other folks. And I think that they want to make that investment. Clearly, the amount of money they're investing in our community is tremendous, and I think we can open up more lines of communication. It's half the battle. And I was just over at their headquarters, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. I forget the exact date. And what they're doing there is remarkable, not just for our community, but for national defense. They are part of this golden dome that we're talking about to protect us, God forbid, something bad happens with the communist Chinese dictatorship. But you know, these are the frontline folks that are going to protect our men and women in the military along those lines.
One thing,
Yeah, sure.
One of the challenges that a lot of them told us is how
Ms.
long
Nancy?
it takes. One of the challenges we heard is how long it takes to get security clearances. So for a lot of these companies, because they deal with Department of Defense, because you have a lot of the boomers that are retiring that have institutional knowledge and the clearance. You know, I know somebody who worked at L3 Harris and had prostate cancer and had to be taken off the grant. And that was a huge, big problem because he was the one with the clearance. And so trying to find a way to expedite that, we realize there's a lot of hoops and it's very important to have the clearance, but it just seems like all of these companies have that concern because they just can't get them quick enough.
I think we heard that from Lockheed Martin as well.
No, I've seen it firsthand. I talked with the folks at Northrop, and I'll get to Rob in a second, they're hiring these folks because they need them, and then they're literally waiting to go to work, and it's a real frustration, and it's one of the things we need to expedite, and it just shows, you know, where this is where, again, almost like an Elon Musk type technology needs to be handled for common forms. And as you know, you'll go through these different workforce issues. But I think this is something that where the government is still in the 1950s, and a lot of these things can be expedited. Rob, you want to add to that?
Well, I know that the Defense Security, Counterintelligence Security Agency has even authorized temporary clearances. What complicates the issue, which you may not be aware, is if the employee decides to move into a different project, that starts the process all over again. It's dependent on which position and which job their field security officer has applied them for. So that's been a complicated, convoluted process, but they are providing temporary security clearances in the interim.
I can speak to this too. My daughter is graduating from UF, Industrial Systems Engineering. She's graduating with 3 L3 Harris internships and 2 years working remote for them. She had to go through the security clearance system 3 times. During that period, it's just outdated, and she's starting full-time with them in July, and just got word this week that she does not have to go through the security clearance. So I said, what does that mean for you? She goes, that means I don't sit at my desk for 3 months doing nothing.
Exactly.
So another point on the companies having a presence in the community. I come from 10 years in the nonprofit sector with junior achievement, as you know, and then with the chambers. And it's interesting the differences between the companies who are headquartered here and not headquartered here. So L3 Harris is a fantastic example of a company that is invested locally. They go through leadership changes, and we see that ebb and flow. But the companies that aren't headquartered here often use the excuse, our headquarters are in Washington or California or Texas or wherever, so we make our local investments there. So some kind of communication with those companies. They're starting to understand that we are providing their workforce. They are starting to understand that Brevard is the kind of place that believes in public philanthropy and public support of our workforce and our companies and our sectors. But it is slow going, and when you're communicating with these major companies, and in the port also, to invest locally, to support the community where they are drawing their support from.
Okay, thanks, Ann.
But Congressman, in closing the loop with DCSA, I just wanted to say that there are opportunities whenever you hear of that for them to communicate directly with the Congressman's district office. And we could take that ball and run with it. Because that's something that the Congressman is very supportive of, is getting our folks to work. And they shouldn't be sitting at a desk without that security clearance. And we've been pretty successful in navigating and communicating, because mostly bureaucracy is there's a cog in the wheel somewhere. So the Congressman has effectively opened that dialogue in the past. So please share with your friends, with your companies, to reach out to our district office.
That's a great point. All right, so as I get ready to wrap up, a couple things. One is the bike trail issue. I think that's something we can definitely look at. It sounds like everybody and their brothers involved, and that's the problem. I think that's, and the other thing I'll mention is these. I think everyone has it, and I think I've even put it online multiple times, but this year we're going to be in Washington at least 35 weeks out of the 52. And so those events that I'd like to attend, I'm doing my best to attend. I know we've had a gazillion visits the last couple days. They're good, long days, and I'm enjoying them, actually, because, again, you really have a feel for what's going on in the community and where we can help and where we can't in some cases. But it's so if you have an event that you want us to attend, just, again, let us know. We do as much as we can going back and forth. And also, for those who don't know, our life is also very changed, not just because I got elected to Congress, but my wife is actually now, if you haven't heard, she's actually the Chief of Staff to the Surgeon General of the United States. So she is actually in Washington most of the time. And so it's been a change in lifestyle to the nth degree. It's very unique. I visited my house yesterday. It was really exciting. So it's a different world. But we are fully ingrained here. A reason why we made some internal adjustments on our staff. We wanted to make sure that we focus on really serving, as Rob brought out and Pam leads the charge, of handling constituent work. It's so vital. As I mentioned on this political side, we were getting hundreds of calls a day from people who don't live in the district, just clogging up the lines. I don't know if it's a political goal of theirs, just to and it would take away from the time from people who have VA needs, or they have Social Security needs, or they have Medicare or Medicaid needs. And so we created a system so we can go through those calls and handle them, because we have a staff that, of course, it's a good-sized staff, but we want to focus on issues. And so, as Julia brought up so well, we've really upped the number of calls we're handling, but more importantly, solving problems. And so we're dedicated towards that. We are not going to be as front-facing as Congressman Posey did a great job on, because what we've kind of changed as we've made this adjustment is really focusing in on how many constituent cases we can handle. And why we do events like this is we hear firsthand, but I really want to focus in on, you can only imagine folks who rely on that Social Security check or that Medicaid payment or let alone Medicare, or they have a passport issue. We want to expedite those as quickly as possible because that's really changing their life. And by being in the office and having a person like Valentina, our team in Washington, really helps us out. But that's how we've adjusted a bit. It's always going to be an adjustment process as we go forward. And fortunately, we've been able to hit the ground running because Pam has assembled a super team here and bringing some folks in and keeping some great people like Rob and Valentina and Julia and Keith. So it's a work in progress. This is like almost literally starting a new business. And so we're going to have some growing pain, but we're really focused on the constituent work. That is what, as Rob brought up really well, when there's that issue, when you guys are getting stymied because someone in Washington isn't returning your phone call or whatever it might be, it's helpful when the congressman calls and said, hey, by the way, have you taken a look at this? They tend to look at it a little faster. I hate to say it, but it's true. So that's kind of our goal. And I'll briefly just touch on this tariff issue as well. I'm as a historian myself, I know that the best trade is free, fair trade, a level playing field. As the president has exposed, that doesn't exist right now. It simply does not exist. We are paying higher tariff rates and we try to trade with other companies, even our friends like Canada, who has like a 270% tariff on milk. I mean, there's some unique things there. All the president says, we're a good, benevolent country. Treat us like you treat anybody else. Give us whatever best tax is no tax, true, fair, free trade. But if you tax us at 10%, we have every right to tax you at 10%. And I know it will disrupt some businesses. We've had this conversation, don't get me wrong. But that's what the president's attempting to do. The second thing we're attempting to do, I think the president's goal is, specifically with China, and let's just really talk about what's happening here, is China, first of all, let's understand, they are a communist dictatorship. Okay, they don't play by the rules. They are the new old Soviet Union. Okay, and this is what they do. If they literally go through the patent office every day and they steal that R&D research. So they don't have to pay as much in R&D. They'll try to replicate what other companies are doing. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. But they'll go in and steal. So that means, unlike a lot of companies in the United States who spend a lot of money in R&D, they don't spend the money, they just steal the R&D. Okay, that's one reality. The second thing, they have slave labor. This is not a joke. They have slave labor. And not all their labor is, but a portion of it. Third is they do not have the environmental concerns that we have. They're still building old coal-fired plants. And so they don't care about the environment. And as you also know, they have no property rights. So if they want to build literally a dam, those people will say, tomorrow, get all your stuff out of here, we're building a dam tomorrow. They have no respect for property rights. And as you know, they're very provocative in what they're doing militarily, not just on land and sea, but in space as well. We're in a space race, again, against this communist dictatorship. And we allowed them, the previous administrations, to join the WTO. And they have certain protections because of the World Trade Organization. And they've abused those. And made it where they're not a fair competitor for a variety of reasons. And so what I think the president is attempting to do is he's trying to isolate China for being a bad actor and saying, if you want to be in the world community, you need to act in the world community and treat other nations fairly and not do some of the nefarious things they're doing and provocative things and candidly, aggressive things like they've done in space. That's where I chair. And so that's the goal. And I know that some folks are going to be hit in the short term, don't get me wrong. But if we continue this trend where they tax us at a higher rate than we tax them, a lot more of our resources go overseas to a nation that is not looking out for our best interests. And so I think there's going to be some transitions there. I am optimistic that we can find other trading partners who want to play by the rules with us. But remember, the United States is the most benevolent nation in the world. I'm proud to be an American. And those who aren't, that's their issue. But since 1945, we changed the world. This is not 1945 anymore. India and China are major competitors. Other nations are. We need to have a level, fair playing field, and that's what I believe in. And I think we'll go through some ups and downs to right-size that. But you've already heard the other nations recognize that we are a good nation, and they need to negotiate some of these trade deals with us, in my opinion. And I think you're going to see a lot of that happen a lot more quickly than people anticipate. The good news is the stock market has settled in. and they're still up over the last year. But remember, we're long-term investors here. We're not day traders. Okay, that's why we have a 401k. And I don't look at it every day, though they're making me look at it every day now. So it's a much different thing. But this is going to be our style. As long as I have the honor to serve you all in the United States Congress, we're going to be accessible. We're going to have honest dialogues. You're going to see me inundate you with information so you're not getting bumper sticker responses to very complex issues. Immigration is a real issue. And I'm really optimistic now that we've secured this border issue that we can find out, who's here illegally. And if they have a criminal record, the president's going to get rid of them. And there's going to be these issues like we just saw with El Salvador. Some guy, they're having this big fight about that right now. But 10 million people came to this country illegally. And there's a lot of good folks who just want the American dream, but they cut in line from people who wanted to come here legally, and that's not fair either. And so the president's been very aggressive about that. I support that endeavor. And what we're going to do by eliminating illegal immigration, we're going to take a look at some of these folks who have been here for a long time and candidly judge them based on what they're doing here in the United States and make a good decision. But what we can't do is allow this to continue, because it's not just people coming here illegally. We all know about and you can talk to Wayne Ivey about this till he's blue in the face. They have these narcotics come across the border. They're killing tens of thousands of Americans. And I already talked about the issue of slavery. There are people, boys and girls, young girls, and we know about human trafficking, that are being sold into sexual slavery in this very country coming over the border. And we have no morality if we can't stop that. And that's why it's important what we're doing at the border. And so this is a challenge for our generation. I'm glad to see that the number it showed that we have the right laws. We just had to enforce them. I mean, that's just an honest appraisal in my opinion. But this is going to be our style. Very candid, very open. If you come to see me in Washington, we're going to have an open door for you. If you call our office, we're going to solve the problem and give you an answer, yes or no. Sometimes it can be no, sorry. But we're going to try to solve problems. And politics is not my strong point. Policy is. And I'm blessed to have a super team in Washington, of course, here as well. And Pam is up at all hours of the night. I get all kinds of emails from him, and I love it. And this is what, as my wife facetiously said, I've never seen you this alive in a long time. This is great. And so we're excited to get to work. We are really changing the way government is done. And I think this DOGE thing is really going to free up some resources, as each of you brought up, to put the money where it should be, whether it be in Medicaid for the right folks who deserve it, and make it where these scam artists and others aren't taking from the system, let alone some of the, I use the term nefarious a lot, but criminal activities that some people are committing within the government. It's an eye-opener being in Washington and getting access to this information that really allows you to make good decisions. And so I want to thank you all for taking your valuable time and how invaluable it is. You have a commitment from our office, and it's our office, to get things done for you. And be team players. And that's why we've reached out to the city councils and the county commissioners, let alone working with our state partners. If we work together as Florida, we solve a lot of problems, and we eliminate some of the red tape that you all have talked about. So thanks for making the time for me. It really is appreciated. And I'll be back in Washington pretty soon. And again, we go to work in these things and work with our team. And we're really blessed to have a mayor who works with us, and he can see some of these issues firsthand and make sure they get elevated. And we have incredible business owners here. It's just, it's a great community to live in. I think a lot of us can live anywhere in the world, and this is where we choose to live. And to have the opportunity to make these changes is very much a challenge, but it's one that's also an opportunity. So thanks for making the time. I hope you all have a great weekend. And again, feel free to call in our office anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.